down, man.
I was giving you a soft intro. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome to the Square Base Show with your host, Robert Val. And today we're going to be talking to you about the infamous Renegade Pack.
It's motherfucking Renegade!
So today's going to be an interesting show because Val has, in almost a rabid fashion, if anyone has ever seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie has worked out where the mail goes. Val has brought all of the Warhammer Old World conspiracy theorists, including Lord Blacksteel, together into what I can only describe as the Avengers of rules, which is super exciting. So we're going to be talking about the Renegade Pack, which I'm going to let Val do the pitch for what it is. But I'm going to play the role of stalwart, like needs convincing. That's me. Here I am.
All right. A devil's advocate, are you?
No, I can't really play that role very well because if I agree with something, I'm just like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah. I'm bad at that. Like, I'm not a very good debate lord, but I will be playing the role of someone like convince me. So hopefully, it's like a presentation to me, a presentation to you on something Val's really passionate about. Do you want to talk to us about, or is that in the preamble, and you want to dive straight in?
Well, I don't think we need to. We probably don't need to go word for word on the preamble because it is a 2-page blog post essentially about why we're doing this. So the Renegade Pack, just high level guys. Let's blue sky this. Let's bring this up to 40,000 feet.
Classic.
The legacy PDFs, folks. 7 armies, about a third of all the factions in the game. They're kind of poo poo. A lot of them are things that were. I'm so happy they were released. Full stop. I think it's really, really cool. However, if you're unfamiliar with where Old World came from, it started development somewhere around 2019-ish, maybe 2018, and then was clearly sidelined for a period of time. When it was first announced, we had Kislev and Cathay and everything that's Square comes around again, all this kind of stuff. And then when we got into last year, into the sort of the 2023 timeline, sorry, I guess the year before last, they announced that there were core factions and legacy factions, and that the legacy factions don't use them. They're not going to be supported. They're not going to be allowed at tournaments. Just the ones in Nottingham at Warhammer World.
Actually, the second most popular wargaming event for Old World in Nottingham.
That's right. The first being the TSN Arena, which you can get tickets at. Again,
a homage to someone, and not a criticism. Please, YouTube, please just shut the fuck up. Okay, all right, carry on.
Oh no, I'll go high five Uncle Adam. We're in his hometown, so anyway, so. We obviously, a year ago when all this was going down, we saw these things. We chafed very vigorously against this. And also me personally, I feel like it's very important that these armies, because we're talking, of course, of Chaos Dwarfs, we're talking about Demons, Ogres, Skaven, Dark Elves, Vampire Counts, and Lizardmen. These are like crucial elements of the world and the world building of Old World, of Warhammer Fantasy. And we suspect that the reason they're not present in the game, some of it might come down to logistics. It's tough to drop 16 complete army lines of models and miniatures and stuff in one go. So maybe it's been pended, but more likely it comes down to this weird bit of internal politicking at Games Workshop, which I only refer to as the publisher. Which is this schism, basically, that you have the studio, you have the main studio. They're responsible for things like Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40K, and then you have SDS, Specialist Design Studios, formerly Forge World, responsible for everything else, or a lot of other things like Blood Bowl, Necromunda, Horus Heresy, Old World, and some others as well. Mm-hmm. And they are no longer crossing the streams when it comes to internal IP. So that would be things like miniatures, are now sort of siloed. They're dedicated to each game. And that's why you don't see AOS models officially supported or used in Old World. And you have the Old World models being released from the old sort of sculpts and things like that. We don't know when that schism for Old World happened, but it sure feels pretty recent. And so when you're looking at the Renegade / Legacy lists, you'll note it really feels like everything was being developed together at one point, and then these guys were dropped. And I would say even make the argument that there's 5 of them that seem to have been dropped earlier, and 2 of them that made it much further in development. That would be Vampire Counts and Dark Elves. Both of those army lists feel very close to the finish line, whereas the other 5 maybe didn't get as much polish.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So what is that all to say? That is all to say that all 7 of them need some help. They never got the final edit. They didn't get brought up to the same place where the core rules were at. So you can see a lot of artifacts in the legacy armies that are like clearly written for a different draft of core rules. And also specifically in the army lists, you see a lot of conditions. So there's a lot of situations where, like you have to bring this unit, you have to bring that unit, et cetera, et cetera. What that means is that forever and for always, if these are the only army lists we ever get for these armies, Source Wars have to be brought in every single Lizardmen list. And so if this is all we have, that kind of really narrows down what you're allowed to do from an army building perspective. And it also stops you from being able to be creative, thematic, build your best possible list. If you're a competitive gamer, if you like to go to tournaments and events, they're very handcuffed, they're hamstrung, and kind of needlessly. A lot of people complain about the points and other things about them, but fundamentally, they just pay a lot in taxes internally that I think also make them like just really a pain in the butt to play with. They feel like they actively discourage you from using them. And so about a month ago, I've been thinking about this obviously since last year, but about a month ago, for whatever reason, I decided that I really wanted to take a really good kick at editing these things, rewriting these things. And I wouldn't say rewrite in the sense of like, sometimes you'll see like people who do a full rewrite of the rules. Mm-hmm. This is really intended to be more of an edit. So like this is meant to get them to a tier that's like closer to where the core armies wound up when they were released. And then from here, hopefully that means that the Renegade factions can sort of continue alongside the main factions for however long they need to.
Okay. All right. So I guess I should ask my first question. How dare you?
How is this guy think he is? He's literally out of breath right now.
Okay. No, yeah. Obviously, I think my support for the Renegade factions is real, of course. And as I've said many times, the community can generally be pretty antsy when it comes to certain stuff. I think a future where there is half the armies are gutted, let's say it's like you can't see many of that play, it definitely also makes a much more boring metagame. And also, even if you're not talking about the competitive scene, if you're just talking about your friendly club store, there only being so many armies is actually pretty dull. Like it's fun playing against, and also like for narrative players, there's more opportunity. For like casual players who just want to like play against a bunch of different stuff, it's better. So there's just a variety of different people who win. And I don't think there's anyone who really loses out. And I think a real good question to ask yourselves as well is, for you personally, do you want there to be more armies to play against or not? I guess is the crux of it. But also, I don't know, let's say Val completely missed the mark on one of the armies and they made it super strong. But it wasn't as strong as, Mortuary Cult or 3 Dragons in Chaos, right? Or it was as strong as them. they still exist. Does that make sense? Like as long as you don't make it stronger than 3 Dragons, right? that's your high end, like too powerful, which is one of the things I've always said about comp is when people are like, they've actually made that quite good. And I'm like, have they made it broken like the other thing? And people are like, no. I'm like, well, then it's fine. So, okay, cool.
So, like, actually, this is a really good opportunity to talk to you about process too. One is that like this is in no way, shape, or form a rebalance either. And so, what I mean by rebalance is that these rules are not like any rules changes that I suggest are there done almost entirely by vibe. So is it something that used to work? Is it something that used to be in the game? Is it something that should be in the game? Like if anyone read it and said like, yeah, that should be there. The impact that these changes have, I literally have no clue. This is literally going to be throwing this out there, and these armies are what they are, just like if this was how they were when they were released, right? So this is an attempt to get them to a place where they maybe should have been, right, when they came out, and it's still not even close. There's lots of details that I didn't even bother to try and like reduce the wild amount of like to try and prevent an overwhelming amount of changes. I tried to go for the sort of heavy hitters, things that are going to have big impacts, and for the most part, that's army lists and then some rules tweaks, and also bringing back to things like slants, things like the Screaming Bell and Plague Furnace and Cauldron of Blood being able to go into units. Things that are sort of iconic, I think, for some armies, being able to have those things in units again.
I'm going to ask another question. Again, how dare you?
Well, I like those things a lot. I think they look really, really cool.
How am I doing? How am I doing in the other role? Good? Is it going well? Yeah,
nailing it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Okay, do you want to hit up the dedications? Like, you want to do some shout outs now, or do you want to do it at the end? We should get into it.
Yeah, we should get into it. So yeah, the process was I took a stab at it. I then shared it amongst my friends, including Rob. Rob wanted to remain impartial so that he could be a devil's advocate on the show, and also was afraid of being fed his own asshole on the internet. And I understand that. I think that is not a great thing. And to be fair,
just there's only a certain amount of asshole I can eat every week. That's all. I already get fed my own asshole a lot on the internet. So you get to be the fun uncle. The dad gets this shit all the time.
Well, as the fun uncle, I think the internet has been overwhelmingly kind to me. The first time I dropped it, there was a lot of concern around like fracturing the community and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, there was a lot of people coming to my defense, and not necessarily viewers of the show, because I was posting in the Reddit r/Warhammer fantasy group, which provided incredible feedback and is often a little hostile to me. But they were not in this case. We had the members of the Squarebase Discord, obviously friendly territory. The Warhammer Facebook, Warhammer the Old World Facebook group.
Not those other bastards.
Not those other jerks. They don't get to party with us. Were incredibly important, but also just random people finding me and reaching out to me on Discord. Specifically for Demons, Danny McDonald, who's a guy out in Ottawa. He's an organizer. The God of Cakes helped out with Demons. Grenmuck and Fresh Prince of Nostramo on Discord for Chaos Dwarfs. Eagle on Discord for Lizardmen was big. And then all of my close associates. We had Oss, who's basically my Toronto TO and guy I go to for all rules questions. Obviously, Peter the Falcon Colosimo, I was hitting him up constantly, and his pals on his podcast, The Old World Charm, Danny and Adam. Steve and Luca from Mountain Miniatures, who are going to adopt this wholesale on their channel. So basically the only real Old World Bat Rep channel that does consistent battle reports on like sort of large scale production will be using these on their show. They're very, very excited. We had Monster Slayer Productions. That's the TO group behind things like the Las Vegas Open, the BAO, who are also looking to, they're running an invitational. They'll be testing this pack, looking to use it at some of the largest events in North America. And then a local podcast, Motley Crude, the guys who run Capital City Bloodbath and Canhammer Teams, also provided some great input. And I will say, those guys are some of the most hostile people towards comp and changing rules that I know, and have shit on me for things I've done elsewhere, also encouraged by this. So there's a pretty broad coalition here, Rob. A coalition, you might say, of the willing. The willing to be renegades.
Okay. All right. I'm not getting into that at all. Yikes. I'll ask again. How dare you?
Why has that been used in it? Has that already? Is that a tagline that's already been used?
I don't know, but if the end of this, if these slides at the end it says mission accomplished, I'm going to be very mad.
That is indeed the final slide. We fixed it, everybody. We're going home. Declare victory. Declare victory. Anyway, So yeah, let's jump into it. I think I've blown all the smoke I need to do. I want folks to know that this comes from a place of passion amongst everyone who's contributed, and the door is still open. If you see anything here that you're interested in commenting on, please hit it up in the comments. Feed it back to me. Get it in front of me on Facebook, Discord, anywhere you can do it, because I track everything in a sheet. And this is made up of so many ideas that have come to me from outside. I couldn't possibly attribute it all properly. So it's been really, really fun and cool to be the Pied Piper of this, because I feel like it's something that people are super excited about.
Okay, fun. Okay, so we've got a table of contents, right? Preface, dedication, we've gone through that. Renegade core rule changes, and then you've got updates for Chaos Dwarfs, Demons of Chaos, Lizardmen, Ogre Kingdom, Skaven, Vampire Counts, and Dark Elves. Woohoo! Okay. Just a quick kind of question from me to you, actually. What kind of impact would, percentage-wise, when we're talking about events, some of these armies are very underplayed, right? Demons of Chaos is one, as an example. And obviously we've done the survey. So do you think that the lack of people playing these armies at events has been because of structural rules changes, like the ones that, structural rules issues, or because, they feel like they're a little concerned that their army might not be valid, and something like this might give it a bit of life? Little column A, little column B, what do you think?
I think it's beyond that. I think that this has basically led a third. So like a third of the people on our survey identified a legacy faction as their favorite faction. And I think that basically suggests to me that there's about a third of the potential players out there that are just disenfranchised. So there's people who are grinding. There are still people grinding out with the vanilla Renegade list, doing their best. People are trying to make Skaven work. Ed on close order, he's like out there like doing some weird shit with Skaven and gutter runners and stuff, and like, but they don't look like what you want them to look like. They're not. It's not what you imagine a Skaven list to look like. So people have to get, if they want to go to a tournament and not just get completely rocked, like you said, the bottom table at your most recent event was Skaven versus Skaven. Skaven wins. Both of them were 0-4 at the time. That's a miserable experience, and I think that's a miserable experience whether you're at a tournament or if you're at home playing with your buddies. And I think a lot of people, even at the list building phase, it's kind of miserable, and we can get into why that is, just because of all the conditions and things you have to jump through in order to do anything with these lists. So yeah, I think not only is it discouraging them to be played at events, I think it's just discouraging fans of these factions from playing at all. And there's also like 30% of people said that one of these was one of their favorite factions. 51% of all players said, this is on our survey, you can go back and look at one of our videos, but 51% of all players said that they owned a legacy faction when the edition started, which is wild. And then 97.5% of players said that they wanted to see the Renegades become core factions in the future. So they have tremendous support, and I think it's actually one of the turnoffs for Old World is how brutal they are.
Okay, yeah, good, nice.
So this is to me, this is a big part of building a big tent. So like to me, this is one of the driving factors, excluding some players from the game, is the poor support for these factions. And so if this gives them a line into the game, and we've seen again in our survey data, getting into the game means you start building a new army. Right? Like, so people with dusty old armies started new armies 61% of the time. Also
means you make friends, and statistically, people with hobbies live longer. So Val's saving your life. Yeah. He's he's extending your life. It's slightly different.
He should probably focus on extending his own life as well, but we'll get there.
I'm trying to help. I'm now his dietitian, and I'm doing excellent stuff.
As you said that sentence, I did take the vape out of my mouth for at least 1 minute. So that's good.
All right. Okay.
I'll leave it over there for 25 seconds.
Right,
okay.
So let's look at the core rules.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So here's Howda has been. So one thing I want to highlight here is that when playing a game using the Renegade Army Legacy Pack, the following core rules are added and affect all factions. And that really only applies to Howda, because Howda does affect two other things. That would be the Arachnarok Spider, as well as, I believe, the War Sphinx. Basically, Howda turns a behemoth and gives it the split profile chariot rule. And what that leads to is that a behemoth in combat uses the crew's weapon skill. So you have an Arachnorak Spider, weapon skill 2. You have in this case, the reason why I feel like it's critical, you have a Stegodon, weapon skill 2, because they're crewed by skinks and they're crewed by goblins and, of course, skeletons. So you have these behemoths at weapon skill 2, really, and they're expensive models. They suck unless they had when they're being hit in combat. So yeah.
Okay, and that's all this does. It changes that.
So I went through a bunch of iterations, but essentially for how to rules specifically, in combat, all enemy rolls to hit are made against the weapon skill of the controlling player's choosing from this model split profile. Personally, I think that should just be for all split profiles. Just choose the best weapon skill, whatever you want. But it is prescribed that you have to use a certain weapon skill. So for these how to models only, you can choose. You can use the crew if you want. You can use the monster, whatever.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and next up, dragged along.
So dragged along is the rule that was added to the big iconic chariots that used to go into units. So I mentioned them before, but it's the Cauldron of Blood. It's the Plague Furnace for Scapes, Cauldron of Blood's Dark Elves, Cauldron of Blood, Plague Furnace, and Screaming Bell for Skaven. And essentially, they're on 60 by 100 millimeters. The units that they used to go into are 25 millimeter frontages now. They went up from 20. So they don't fit neatly into units. And I suspect that the reason why that these are no longer allowed in units is because they were exclusively legacy faction base sizes. And I suppose they maybe didn't want to encourage people to invent a base size, and they didn't, or that they didn't want to create a base size for something that they couldn't sell you. And so these things have been set up so now that they are, as long as they're within, I think, 3 inches of a unit, they can use the unit they're nearby, their movement characteristic, to be dragged along. So that part of the rule still exists. You can still play them outside of a unit if you wish. But however, this adds rules that now allow them to once again be inside of the unit that they used to be a part of. So essentially, if as long as it's a character's mount, so that would be the 3 that I mentioned, because there's another one. I can't remember. It's like the Blood Rack something for Dark Elves that never went into units. Blood Rack Shine. It never went into a unit, so it doesn't benefit from this, and it's not a character mount. But essentially, if it has the large target special rule, which is an interesting situation that doesn't exist anywhere else, I set it up and went back, like lots of discussion around this. How do you handle that? Because a large target inside of a unit, now what? And essentially the way we landed on it was that you can still target that thing as usual, but I took rules from previous editions in which if you do hit it, it's now randomized between it and the unit. And I also set it up that you can't do a lookout sir roll for that thing. So it gets some benefit and protection from being in the unit that it perhaps didn't before, but not an overwhelming amount. And then also there's just some other T's and C's that you need to cover, namely lumbering wouldn't you normally allow it to be joined to the unit. So essentially words to or rules to sort of cancel that out, say that there's an exception to that. So that's basically it. So
the goal is to have these units appear inside units so they're more iconic to how you think that they should play. And these are units that are already not seen at all anyway. So this Correct. Is and it's the same with the Howler thing, with the exception of maybe the Sphinx. Did you see the Sphinx a bit? No, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. These are just actually clarifications. So I'm going to really reduce my how dare you to, well done for even caring. That's what I'm upgrading that to. Anyone who could take issue with this has got to be the driest individual on earth. Yeah, I'm like, cool, man. That's fine.
And I think hopefully one of the things I very purposely did is that a lot of this stuff is aesthetic in foundation. It's and when I ask people, especially in the beginning for feedback, I ask them, is there anything when you read this army list or these units and you think to yourself, that's dumb, or that's stupid? Because I remember before launch, I was thinking in my head, I know that our base sizes are going up. I know that these are legacy factions. How are they going to handle these units that go inside? Because this land's one of them. And and then when I read this rule, it was kind of the worst case scenario for me personally. And anyway, so this is just writing that. And then another controversial thing is that you'll see is I've had to, as a result, create a new base size that doesn't exist. This has caused some people some stress. So I've added a little italic here, which will be in classic writing fashion, ignored by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially all it says is if you don't rebase your model, who cares? It's fine. Just leave enough space. So assume the model now has a 75 millimeter frontage, even if it's on a 60 millimeter base when it's in the unit. And essentially, you can use a spacer. You can just move guys around it on the base. However, you got to fudge it to make it work.
Blue tack it on.
Blue tack it on. This is literally a game, folks, that in the rules, it says just nudge the models. Okay, that is an official rule of Old World. Just nudge it. So
you know that it was written and play tested with no uniform base sizes. You know that, right? Have I ever told you this?
I did not know that.
Oh well, yeah. There you go. There's some information for you.
Which is impressive because they did very thoroughly go back and change up base sizes. So
they did go back and do, yeah, but it was a last minute panic. They were like, people are going to lose it if we don't do base sizes.
Yeah, and that was wise of them. And that
let me know in the comments below what you'd have thought.
All right, so shall we get into the nitty gritty then?
Okay, all right. That's not the nitty gritty.
No,
holy fuck!
This is it. I should have deep dived Siren this because this is a deep dive for 7 fractions. Don't worry, this won't be 3 hours, maybe 2.5.
It can only be 1 more hour. So
hour 15. Okay. I'm already winded, so let's rock. Are we on to the Chaos Dwarfs army list?
We're on the Chaos Dwarf Legacy army list. Yes. So the one that we're looking at currently is the original one. Which obviously Games Workshop put out, right? So to be clear, what is your intention here? You intend to change which units can be taken in armies or just FAQ stuff and kind of neaten it up? Yeah,
so the intention here is actually now Chaos Dwarfs have access to 2 army lists. So you can use whichever one that you wish. There's the original Chaos Dwarf Legacy army list, and now there's also the Chaos Dwarf Renegade army list. So this is the original one that we were working off of, and I think it is. There's the other. On the original, you see a couple hallmarks here of a legacy list. 1+ unit of Infernal Guard. So that just means that Chaos Dwarf army has to have Chaos Dwarfs in it. And sure, that's fine. And I think I want to address this because I removed all of the 1+ units from every single list. Mm. The reason I did that was if these are the only lists that we have forever, then there might come a day where you think to yourself, well, maybe I don't want to have a unit of Infernal Guard in my army list. Mm-hmm. Maybe I want to run an entire Hobgoblin army. Maybe I want to do some other stuff. And then people will say, well, then there's going to be armies that never have Chaos Dwarfs. I'm like, okay, well, what business of that is yours?
Shut your damn mouth, yeah, and keep your nose out of my business. Right?
But seriously, like literally doing this, I found my Warhammer libertarian. I swear to God, I was like, what? Who's to say that I have to take this particular core unit every single time when there's other core units to be able to have fun and experiment with?
That's right.
I also provide
Val, not in the pocket of big army list. Not in the pocket.
The other thing about Chaos Dwarfs is that you feel very much motivated to bring a Black Orc Wyvern and Black Orcs in core. So we can go to the Renegade list now, if you like.
Yes, perfect. There we go.
So yes, in the Renegade army list, there's a couple things that'll immediately jump out. In characters, I move the Bull Centaur Torok over to rare. And this was something I thought that kind of follows in the tradition of the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth and his pals, the Dragon Ogres. I thought that they were rather analogous. And it also puts it into a column because rare for Chaos Dwarfs has a big gaping hole for the Kadai Destroyer in it. The rare section of Chaos Dwarfs right now is quite barren because there's no
cannon. How dare you?
So it's a less competitive portion of it. And this also, I think, opens up the chance for the Tarok to be taken more. I also uncoupled it with the Bull Centaurs and just limited how many you could take. Right now, you have to take 1 unit of Bull Centaurs for each Tarok that you have.
That's bullshit.
And that's bullshit. Exactly, Rob. So this is all about limiting bullshit.
Did you put Chaos Dwarfs first to get me on board immediately? Or is it just alphabetical?
I think it was alphabetical. I don't know if Demons of Chaos would be first or not.
But well done. Well done, well done to play to your audience. Okay.
It's just,
but also, how dare you?
Happy accident.
How dare you?
Happy accident. So that is the most significant thing as far as like characters are concerned. Now in core, I wanted to provide a path because obviously, like, well, there's not going to be any Chaos Dwarfs and Chaos lists anymore. Well, here's now a path to, instead of feeling forced to always have Black Orcs in your army list, I wanted to open up a path to have a pretty wicked core option for the Chaos Dwarves. So rather than have the 1+ Infernal Infernal Guard, I said that if you're Castellan, Infernal Castellan is your general, you can bring 0-1 Infernal Ironsworn in core instead, but you can't bring any Black Orcs if you do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Vibes. So like, if you want to not go Black Orcs, you want to go with an elite core. So essentially, if you want to go elite Chaos Dwarf instead of elite Black Orc, you can do that now. And I think that has a nice feel. I don't think it's insane, and it might still be that the Black Orcs are better. Infernal Ironsworn are pretty awesome, but they are expensive. You pay a lot for it. Elsewhere, there's going to be some tweaks to a lot of the Renegade list had much more punitive 0 to whatever limitations. So I opened up the war machines so that they're on par with other war machines. They're making them 0 to 2. And then I actually just removed the limitations on the Hell Cannon. And then the only other and the Dreadquake Mortar, because they're limited by
Did you half its points?
So we didn't. I didn't touch on this. I didn't touch points anywhere, and that's mostly because we don't know how the publisher, Games Workshop, is, and the creators are going to, if they will at all, touch points. So
I think I have a great idea for this. I'd like to talk to you about, like, off air, and then maybe we'll do this on air. But we did a process when Age of Sigmar was in a tough spot. For 6 months, and we had no updates from Games Workshop. We started running events called the Fat Middle events, which is pretty interesting. But we'll talk about that, and then we'll come back to that in the future, because that works quite well.
Right on. But yeah, just as a general principle of this update, no points have been changed. It's not that I don't realize points would make a big difference. The other thing is we don't know what these armies are going to be like now. Like, we have no idea what's overcosted now that you don't have to take Infernal Guard. So like, we need to see these things in action to see, do they need help points adjustment? We don't know. And then one thing I did add back to this list as well are giants. So 0-1 Chaos Giant per 1,000 points using the Beastman Brayherds version. And then, of course, the Bone Grinder got added here as well. Some people did say, looking at you, Os, did say that the giants in Chaos Dwarfs are not necessarily mercenaries. The Bone Grinder may not be appropriate because usually they're indentured or laborers, if you will. But then someone else pointed out that in the lore that maybe changed. But anyway, doesn't matter. Bone Grinder, Chaos Giant. The Chaos Giant there is actually as a proxy for the Siege Giant. For all 10 people out there that have a Siege Giant, well, now you can run them as a Chaos Giant in your list.
Yeah, I think also one of the things that I guess you have pointed out quite nicely here, maybe I'll see it later on, is with the release of all the arcane journals and all these new fun mercenary units that people can take. Like, obviously the original Legend Renegade list that got uploaded by Games Workshop doesn't start to include them, or they don't include them in the arcane journal, right? And they can be used as a mercenary in X or something. So that's quite fun, going back and seeing which ones would be taken.
So there is, I think the Badland Ogres, I believe, specifically say they can be taken by anybody. But most of them do have like specific factions that are allowed to take them. And yes. And then just another thing that is not an oversight, but also allies. I didn't make it a big focus of this version simply because there's a lot to get through otherwise. But I think going through and creating a Renegade ally matrix that includes the legacy factions in the allies of the core factions, because that's where right now, for example, Warriors of Chaos can't take Demons of Chaos as an ally. That's bit shit, bit dumb. And there's lots of people out there who have fun with allies. Just because I don't use them doesn't mean that it's not something that maybe would be useful to someone as a thing to go off of. So yes, in a future version somewhere down the line, I will include an update for that.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. I think this is good. This feels almost the lightest. This is the lightest touch, the smoothest, the little, like, it feels like nothing to me. Like, so this is fine.
My goal is that is exactly the reaction I get. Is like, oh, that makes sense. And I think it's been tested. I just want to say that like something like 82. I'm just looking at my survey here. 82% of respondents to the survey said that someone like the community should take on updating the legacy factions if they aren't untouched by the studio. And by the way, if we get an update in June and the studio does all of this and the legacy factions are brought up to standard, I am totally cool with that. That's great. And I'm happy to withdraw this. I would much rather they do the job because it is their game and I love playing it. But they've said that they're not going to. They said that these things are here to die on the vine. And I'm here to say, absolutely not. And I think as customers, I think you don't have to look very much further than Blood Bowl to see what happens when a community keeps a game and then the factions within it alive. Someday down the road, you get gnomes, which is, what we're all hoping for here.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. There's also some rules changes.
Yes, the rules changes, and I've minimized a window, and I need to find it again. All right, there it is.
Okay.
So basically, there were when reaching out to people, there's probably other stuff that could be done, but these were, I would say, the things that frustrated Chaos Dwarf players the most, and they felt like pretty minor things. Well, not necessarily. They will have impact in the game. But again, when you can already bring a Black Orc War Boss on a Wyvern, I'm not sure that this makes a better unit. So one thing would be that this is a general Renegade thing. A lot of the combat characters could not bring full plate. So the Castellan and the Seneschal, who can be in units with full plate, could not have it. So obviously we just added that back. And then also allowed the Infernal Castellan to be mounted on Bale or Great Taurus. And then the Seneschal to be on a Great Taurus. So that gives you a mount for your combat character, which currently it does not exist. Now this was something that my good man Steve over at Mountain Miniatures had umbrage with. Steve! He said that is not how it is in the that's not how it is anymore. That in the last few cracks at Chaos Dwarf rules, they haven't been able to be mounted. And in general, that's what I've deferred to. However, if you do go back to OG Chaos Dwarves, at one point, the Castellan type units could be on Tauruses. And there are lots of people out there with Castellans on Tauruses. So it's kind of badass. Why not? Let's go for it. Secondly, the Kadai Fireborn, for the most part, people just wanted this. Literally, multiple people were like, why is the Fireborn vulnerable to fire? This like annoyed people to no end. And they're like, can you just have the Born of Fire rule? I think it's from the Bale Taurus. And I was like, yeah, sure. So groundbreaking here.
Yeah, like it's a little upsetting. Iron Drakes have got a 3-up ward against fire, but a fire demon does not.
Right. So as far as things,
I also don't know why it's only a 3-up. Like immune to fire attacks is what I would have said. So if all you've given them is a 3-up ward save, I'd actually say you haven't gone far enough, right? That's what I would say.
I nailed it. But also, to me, this is a nothing burger. This is something that just makes people feel better, right? Like it's not gonna change. It's going to change maybe 1% of every game that ever exists. And then late in the game, I did add a wound to them because they are a monstrous creature with 2 wounds, and they're very expensive and very squishy. So I felt like it did seem strange that they were limited to 2 wounds.
Do you know how many points they are right now? I think a good test always is like, what is the points per wound PPW?
Didn't look.
I mean, so just as context, points per wound on on a Chaos Knight is nearly 50 points. But then when you get to a Dragon Ogre that's hyper efficient, I think it's down to 12 or 14 or something. So that's your range. So Games Workshop definitely, the publisher definitely hasn't necessarily nailed the range anyway. So I think that's fine. And also, no one has this army. Also, no one cares. If you played against, it's fine. These are so light. I want you to know, I don't even need to read the rest. I'm in. You've got me. You've convinced me here. The fact that this was missing, I'm in. This is all I needed. I'm not going to play them, the Kadai.
The Kadai. Okay.
The Kadai. I'm not going to play the Kadai, but
you can come over to the Squarebase Open Toronto next fall, and you can play with the Renegade lists in the tournament. So that's Chaos Dwarfs. I think no more notes. I think that's pretty straight up.
I'm in.
And people are begging for the Kadai Destroyer in the comments. Dudes, dudettes, NBs, there's so many inexplicable units missing. And just off the top of my head, Skaven laborers. There's no skink cohorts, so you can't bring ranked skinks anymore. I didn't know that until I started this.
Jungle Swarms in.
Jungle Swarms are there, yes. But there's no skink. You can't bring ranked skinks anymore. And like I was offended. That's the only way I am
offended.
That. Anyway, we'll get to Lizardmen. But and then of course the Kadai Destroyer. Those 3 units. Maybe, and if I haven't added any units in, and I think that's because of the light touch principle here. Shall we continue?
Yeah, I like the idea that you might do a second one because it's like a deal. It's not like a DLC. It's like a patch, right? But it's like you could be like, cool, we're gonna be running Squarebase standard, but then we're gonna use the Renegade pack. We're also gonna use the Renegade updated rule pack, like which could be a separate thing. I think that's really positive. That like. There's a line in the sand here where you're like, this is just clarification. Another thing I do might be like a full addendum or like a full change to some stuff.
Actually, or like a Renegade unit pack. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. And then you could be like, these are in effect or not in effect. Because actually, not to waylay the conversation, I want to stay really focused, but big conversation happened last night in the WhatsApp chat for my events that I have. So whenever you come to one of my events, you get added to a WhatsApp chat. And it's got a pretty burgeoning, healthy community of, I mean, all the content creators who you know in the old world, with the exception of like maybe Steve and a couple of other people, are pretty much in that WhatsApp chat as well because they've all been to events at my place. So like
at the Old World Content Farm, Houston Arena,
the Old World Content Farm that I'm running. Anyway, and then the major feedback I got yesterday was people just want slightly different formats. That's what they want, and that's what will make people more engaged in playing an event. So I don't think any of that is negative. Anyway,
and I think one of the big and I think legitimate concerns that was raised repeatedly, and this is I think covered in really good detail. I'm going to plug him. Dr. Luke Blacksell on his channel just released something about comp. And if you can get through the intro, because he has a bizarre intro every time, it's grown on me, but nonetheless, if you can get through the intro, he basically has a video essay on comp and the way communities react to comp, the history of comp in fantasy. He doesn't prescribe any solutions or anything, but it's a really cool conversation because the biggest criticism I had when I was presenting this to the public was you're gonna fragment communities. You're gonna make it so everyone's playing a different version of Old World, and that this is what ruined blah 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 for me. And again, similar to the like being forced to bring infernal whatever's in a Chaos Dwarfs list. I really do believe that at the local level, we're in a growth phase. You know, every scene needs to find what's the most agreeable thing to the player base. If that's fixing some of the outlandish shit in the core rules, changing army construction, changing mission types, using the Renegade pack, using your own Renegade pack, whatever it is to get people engaged in playing, I think that's what matters. Because the more people who play, the more then we're able to advocate and pressure the publisher to meet our expectations. If people don't actually play this, it doesn't really matter. So getting people out and playing is the thing that matters the most. I think this is a tool for engagement, for getting people into it.
Yeah, and a good point has been made in the chat, which I think is really fair and something people should take in as context to continuously use, is not having half of the traditional factions in the game is already splintering the community. If anything, this feels like an attempt to sow the seams between like the haves and the have-nots. And I think that's really good. So that's actually a much better way of putting it. I would say that we have a community and we're trying to develop bonds between them versus trying to push them apart. That's actually a really nice way of thinking about it. That's really nice.
And to those too that will say well, these are unsupported by Games Workshop. They won't make any money. I just want to point out that in our data, that the only difference between people who started legacy armies and people who started old world core armies, as far as their purchasing decisions were concerned, literally the only difference was they bought more AOS miniatures. They had the same rate of used miniatures, 3D printing, recast, all that stuff, same rate. The only thing is that they bought more AOS stuff. So Games Workshop does not lose by supporting legacy factions. They simply lose in their silly internal schism battle. This is not a losing equation for the publisher in any way, shape, or form. So let's move on to the Demons of Chaos.
Demons of Chaos. Demons of Chaos. So this is the original army composition list here. Issues.
This is the OG. So this is up there with Lizardmen as far. Actually, this is probably up there more with Skaven as far as one of the most confounding, pain in the stuff, list building approaches. So essentially, if I could paraphrase it, depending on who your general was, changed what units qualified for special and for core. And so that really forced you into a sort of mono god build, and also limited your core choices as a result. And just this part alone, I think, discourages use of demons, because otherwise I think they do have some very strong unit rules. So I think that's about as deep as we need to go. Let's see what the Renegades get to work with.
Let's go. It's up on the screen.
All right. So with the Renegade, the first thing that might pop out is that I said 0 to 1 greater demon per 1,000 points, as opposed to just 1 per list. So this is not only, this happened with the Slan as well, where even if you were playing a 5,000 point game, you were only ever allowed to bring 1 Slan or 1 greater demon. So that opens this up. It also allows you, Bardmate, to take more than one of the coolest models in this army. So we're in a monster meta right now. Anyway, the greater demons are not exactly OP or particularly resilient. They're good. They're not shit. They're good, but they aren't a Chaos Lord on Dragon. They're well short of that. So this just allows people to do that if that's something they want. If you don't think it's cool to have more than 1 greater demon in your list and you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It's just that you're not forced to not do it. The Herald of Kord is the same. Demon Prince is the same. Pardon me. I considered, I think the Falcon actually suggested that the Demon Prince just be the Warriors of Chaos Demon Prince, which would give him access to much better items and a 5-up regen and things like that. I thought that might be a bit strong because the Demon Prince is already an excellent choice. So we just kept him the same there. Now, the thing that is of the most different and I think most cool here is that for core, now all of the sort of iconic core infantry units, the Bloodletters, Plague Bears, Demonettes, and Pink Horrors, they're just available as core to anyone, regardless of who your general is. And then if your general is a demon of Khorne, now you can take Fleshhounds as core. If it's Nurgle, Nurglings, Slaanesh, Seekers, and Tzeentch, Blue Horrors, and Brimstone Horrors. So you do get a benefit. You get a little juice depending on who your general is. But it doesn't stop you, for example, from taking, a different core infantry unit if that is what you so choose. And then in special, go ahead.
No, I've got nothing to say. I'm listening.
Special and rare here, basically just normalize it to how it was in the past. So specifically, I looked at the 8th edition book for my guidance here. So essentially, you'll see the units that were special in those days are now special. Rare is now rare. And there may have been some things. I don't even think there were unit restrictions on these. Rare especially is limited mostly by the 25% point limit on it, whether or not you're using a rule of 3 or anything like that. It's just hard to cram too many of the same unit in there. And then, so things like Plague Drones, which previously you could get into special by taking Nurgle, they're just rare now. But they are strong. Hellflares, you'll see, are stronger. So I think this is a pretty fair list that's based in the history of the game and also gives you some fun choices.
I mean, you're basically talking about 4 entire model ranges that exist out there. And it's really weird. It's really weird, not to see them on the table a lot, because demons are pretty popular, especially some of the ones that really have got like a lot of some of the newer sculpts, like the Nurgle stuff and the Tzeentch stuff is pretty awesome to see on the table and pretty popular aesthetics-wise. But the fact that they weren't really functional to use is a little damning.
Yes, and one thing to point out too is that this would be a list that right now is real heavy on points. So like this is something that is a list that does feel quite spendy, and it feels almost as though that they're pointed to have a 5-up ward save across the board. So why don't we go to our rules changes?
Okay, let's go. Wow.
So on the rules changes, the first one here is a change to demonic. I had originally had this set up so that right now demonic, if you don't know, basically you have a 5-up ward save against non-magical attacks. And this is the only save that most demons have, period. And so if you ran into anything that had magical attacks, you suddenly were just naked before the world. I had suggested originally that they have a ward save except against things that are magical and flaming. So you have to have both of those things to take away the ward save. And my thought was that's like sort of feels themey-ish. Like cleansing fire, I guess, would be a cool anti-demon thing, or magical fire would be a cool anti-demon thing. And one of the reasons why I want to do that is that in previous editions, they always had a 5-up ward, but there were lots of rules sprinkled out in items, in units, all over the place that were specifically anti-demon. Because demons aren't core, that kind of shit went away. There's not a lot of anti-demon anything. There are a handful. There's very, very little anti-demon things out there. And so I thought that it would be cool if there was a way to take it away. The feedback I got was, just give demons their 5-up ward. Like what? They're so expensive. They suck. And this was very common. And like, why complicate it? Just give them the 5-up ward. And so ultimately, that's where I landed. I said that. So basically, all we're doing is we're deleting that were caused by a non-magical attack. Demons just have a 5-up ward save now. I think immediately the army list, this change, you could probably stop straight up and see what happens with demons, because I think they would immediately be more interesting. However, I didn't stop there because demons also have a lot of confounding lack of rules, and felt like they could use some help. So demon princes, confoundingly, don't have a regeneration 5-up. Which the Warriors of Chaos one does. They also don't have access to core items, or the Warriors of Chaos items. So they're already sort of a lower tier of Demon Prince, despite being very good. But we just give them the 5-up regen. That still is mitigated by the Warp Spawn rule, just like the regular Demon Prince. So you do lose that. You do lose that against non-magical attacks. Against magical attacks. But you have your 5-up ward behind it. So all greater demons add the close order special rule. Some people think that this is already covered by Behemoth, but I don't think so. I think they do need to have close order in order to get the +1 combat bonus. Flesh Hounds of Khorne, and then basically for each of the sub units, they were missing rules that they've had in the past or would be flavorful to make the unit choice a little more interesting. So Flesh Hounds of Khorne, we added Swift Stride. Potentially makes them very good. We'll see. This may have been my only whoopsie. I don't know.
Oh no!
Paladin, what?
Oh no! Would the Flesh Hounds kill 3 dragons?
No, we'll kill 3 dragons.
It's fine then.
Definitely
it's
not.
fine then.
Okay, cool. Good. So we'll have to see how Flesh Hounds of Khorne do. Palanquin of Nurgle. This was just someone who just really wanted to be able to put their Palanquin back in the unit, and I was like, sure, man, no problem. Literally messaged me repeatedly. One guy. He messaged like multiple channels. Like he was hailing me across all frequencies, and I was like, all right, no problem, we can do that. The next one, and things like this, by the way, there's probably lots and lots of them because I've been tracking them. And I think in a future version of this, going through and doing the detailed edit of it should have this option. It used to have this weapon. It doesn't anymore. I think that's that kind of detail work. If this works, we can do that in the future. Just so anyone else is like, but I want this, message me. I'll track it and we'll see if it's got any basis in history. Nurglings get scouts. Again, Steve the Mountain, very nervous about this because he has apparently a friend who plays demons and he doesn't want to have scouting Nurglings to deal with. But Nurglings always had scouts. It was confusing to me why they didn't have them now.
That's what they do.
They're back.
That's what they do.
That's what they do. The Hellflare, Secret Chariot, the Hellflare and Secret Chariot of Slanesh, they get a because they're light chariots. They don't have any AP on their impact hits. They're almost good as it is with AP -1. We'll see. Are they too good? Who knows? They're expensive and they're delicate. And as Rob keeps pointing out, probably won't kill a dragon. Should be fine. And then Blue Horrors of Tzeentch added skirmishers because there's nothing unique about them or any reason for them to exist. Just gives them a little bit of an interesting thing. The Skull Cannon of Khorne down there, the only change to that actually is bringing it in line with, and I did this for the Iron Blaster too, chariots with cannons on them. The Steam Tank is the only one in the core factions. The Steam Tank was errated that it just can only fire the cannon in the front arc. So it doesn't have a 360 cannon. So anyone out there, because again, a principle of this effort has been no nerfs. So I haven't really nerfed things. Where there are changes, it's to bring them in line with stuff that has been changed in the core game. Something to add more flavor or bring back an identity that a unit has lost. Or you just sort of normalize things. So in general, no, this is not about balance. That's about making it the same as a similar unit elsewhere.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Okay, cool. This all seems fine. This feels like, again, like I say, very little. I will say, how dare you to stay fair and balanced.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, fair and balanced. But apart from that, seems fine.
Excellent. All right, let's continue. Where are we next? Are we Lizardmen? Please be Lizardmen.
And I'm just going to give you've got 45 minutes. I just want you to be aware of that.
We're crushing it. Lizardmen army list, God bless them. These feel like the first things that were stopped in development to me. It is an incomplete army list as it is, and an incomplete roster. Some things I really want to shout out. So the 0-1 Mage Priest thing is the same thing. If you're playing a 10,000 point army with this list, you can have one slan. That doesn't make any sense. In the past, you could bring multiple slans. Double slan was an army list in the past. I don't think there's any real reason not to do that. They then had some really confounding unit restrictions on the old blood. So it was this 0-1 old blood or skink priest. A skink priest is a level 2 wizard. It's a hero tier character that is linked to a lord level character. Who wins that matchup? The old blood. Yeah. The old blood does. So you never saw a skink priest ever, because it meant that you couldn't bring old bloods on Carnosaurs, one of the only effective units in this particular list. So that was dumb. 1+ unit of Saurus Warriors. Again, nothing against Saurus Warriors. I don't want to have to always take them if I don't want to. No. Get off my back. So that's been eliminated. Temple Guard are 0-1 in core. That's it, period. They don't appear in the special section. Why? I don't know. The Stegodon had 1 unit entry, just Stegodon. There was no Stegodon Ancient. So here's how we fixed it. 0-1 Mage Priest per 1,500 points. I get the vibes, the idea of, slans should be unique. And so, in larger games, 3,000 point games, works for your format, Rob. You can have 2 slants. I think that works. It's unique to the slan, but we'll see that the slan is fairly unique. 0-1 Old Bloods per 1,000 points keeps his previous one, but now we've removed restrictions for all the other characters because obviously they should not have restrictions. And then core, remove the restrictions there, and then we said you can have the Temple Guard in core if your general's a slan mage priest.
Yeah, obviously.
And now in special, we've added Temple Guard to special, which did not exist before, so you can bring multiple units if you are so
What were they,
inclined.
not available at all?
They did not exist. You could have 1 unit in core. That was it. Did not exist in special. Again, I think this was
a very softly spoken. How dare you?
Pterodon riders and Ripperdactyl riders were linked to per skink, per skink chief. Why? Why? It doesn't make any sense. So that's gone. Stegodons are now separate from ancient Stegodons who slide over to rare. Other than that, this thing is a fairly traditional list. This is just really bringing it up to what I would call a normal standard for a Lizardmen army list. That's it.
Okay, sweet. But then you did some rules changes?
So this would be the closest I would say to a rewrite. So the first one is Cold-Blooded. And Cold-Blooded, for always, Cold-Blooded. This is the thing that made Lizardmen work. They're low leadership. However, they can roll an extra d6 and discard the highest when they were doing leadership tests or break tests. So it's not undead. Doesn't mean that you're unbreakable. It means that you're less likely to break. It means that your stupidity on your Cold One riders isn't as big of a deal. It means that your skinks that are like leadership 5 have a chance of passing a panic check. All these, which they can with current Cold-Blooded. But anyway, bringing back Cold-Blooded, I think, is just full stop necessary. It is how this army and these units, which are largely copied from previous editions, it is how these units were created. It is a key part of the identity of Lizardmen. So bringing it back, because currently it's only for like panic, terror, and fear checks, I think is what Cold-Blooded's for. So bringing it back and establishing it where it used to be, I think, is really, really crucial. And again, this makes them better than most at leadership, but still way worse than undead. So I think it's completely okay and fair. We'll see. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe Lizardmen are OP now. I doubt it. So next, this is one that I do think is the closest to a rewrite, is the Slann Mage Priest, and I hope people understand why. The Slann is iconic. It is the only level 4 caster available to the Lizardmen. It has always been venerated as one of the best casters in the game. At present, he is a shell of himself, and this is a unit that one of the most famous versions of is a literal skeleton. All right, Lord Croak is literally dead, and the version of the Slann Mage Priest in Old World is worse than a dead Slann. So basically, going back to it, it's normalizing him to rules that he would have had in the past, or something close to it. And that is also reversing the shadow nerf of him that happened when they sort of did a sneaky update to the legacy factions back in April. So that's one, changing his movement, his base movement from 2 to 4, which is where he always was. He retains Fly 8, and then changing him back to monstrous infantry. So when he's on his own outside of a unit, he has 360. He can see in 360 and float around and do whatever he wants. He can also get lone character protection from other units, and he can join units as a monstrous infantry character. We got rid of large target, which is a bit of a nerf. This is controversial because now he can't see over things. But you'll see why that needed to be removed, and deleted close order because usually it takes on the formation of a unit that it joins. And then on Guardians, basically deleting the version of the Guardians rule, which is how he got basically protected by Temple Guard in the current rules. And then, this is actually misprinted. I'll have to get this fixed. But yeah, the Guardians rule is actually on the Temple Guard, and we'd be adding that a unit with the Pelican special rule can join the unit. At any rate, we're adding to the Slann Wisdom of the Old Ones. This comes from a fan army book written by Egil on Discord. Once per turn, the Slann Mage Priest may reroll one of the d6 when making a casting roll. Nothing too crazy. Mm-hmm. In addition, it knows one more spell chosen the usual way than is normal for the level of wizardry. So it brings him on par with a level 4 necromancer with the spell familiar. Mm-hmm. The once per turn rerolling one of the d6, I took that wording straight from there's a discipline of the old one they can buy, allows them to do that on a dispel. So you can reroll 1d6 on a cast and a dispel if you pay for it. Palaquin, this is basically restoring his ability to join a unit of Temple Guard. And so, iconic, big old toad floating above a unit of like yoked up, juiced lizard, Saurus warriors protecting their big frog. Basically, the way it works is he sits in the center of the unit. As long as he's not in a fighting rank, he can still cast as normal and he can dispel as normal. He can see in 360, but he can't use assailment spells. Going back many editions, I think in 6, he was actually not allowed to attack in combat. And so I thought that was a good way to moderate a little bit. You'll note my first crack at this actually used straight up the prophetess rule from Bretonia, which allows a prophetess to be in the second rank and still not dispel, but still cast stuff for Bretonia. So it does have precedence in the current game, and I think gives the Slann a core part of his identity back, as well as the Temple Guard. Can you scroll down just a little bit so I can have a peek?
For sure. These all seem good. I mean, I think ultimately, like, the most iconic unit not working, so Slann is the most iconic unit in Lizardmen, not working in a way that it should even. And many Lizardman players speaking to me and coming to my events, both of them, have expressed to me that, like, I can't take a slan, and that sucks a lot. And I'm like, okay, and especially with how powerful we know. Well, but obviously, Magic is much more powerful. Not much more powerful. It's as powerful as it was in 8th edition, but in a very different way.
Yes, I would say that's very accurate. Yes,
but it's also very mandatory to have Magic and bring Magic in. So yeah, I think this will end up just being a net positive ultimately for those units. And again, Games Workshop are never going to. Oh, okay, they may not. Redress this in any particular way. So it's good it's being redressed because you do want to play against the big toad. That's what you want to do. And you want to play with the big toad. That's what their job is, to be on the board.
So one thing that this does open up is the fact that the big toad still doesn't have to go in a unit, right? So he doesn't have to join the Temple Guard. There's a lot of incentive to put him in Temple Guard. But because he's monstrous infantry, he can now sort of bounce around various skink units. He can be out there doing very unslan things. So we'll see how players actually use this. Will they use the sort of traditional thematic rules, or will they have a solo floating slan? Again, better than a Chaos Lord and Dragon, probably not. But we'll see how people actually take this up. Temple Guard, simple change to their stat line, go into Initiative 2, where they always have been. For some reason, they were Initiative 1. I assume a copy paste error. And then this is just, again, this was accidentally double done, but this is simply making it so that they work correctly now with the Palanquin rule. The next one would just be on Stegodons. The Ancient Stegodon has the Engine of the Gods. Right now, you have to have 2 Stegodons with an Engine of the Gods, which is 500 points, and that gives you +1 to cast, but you have to have 2. So I simply said, if your army contains, so just delete that. So now if you bring an Engine of the Gods, it's within 6 inches of a caster, you get +1 to cast. Wow.
Calm down.
The final one is on the Salamander. The Salamander is once a glorious unit in the Lizardmen roster, was reduced to a pretty much useless breath weapon. So a template spitting out from his mouth. Simply restored him to the way he'd worked in previous editions, using the Column of Fire rule, which you would know if you're one of the 10 people who's ever read the Fire Thrower rules, like a fire cannon or something. Essentially, it's range 0 because you put the template down and then you roll the artillery dice. How far the artillery dice is how far you can move, how far the template moves forward, which is how it worked in previous editions and was just fine and a lot of fun. And then in the notes there, just what happens when you roll a misfire, it eats some skinks.
Okay.
All right. Lizardmen, how you feel? Are you offended?
How dare you? Yeah, no, not at all, really. I think addressing what's happened with the slan is fine. These other little changes are micro, and I think it will be my feedback on most of this. I think the changes are really light. I applaud you for that. And I'm sure there would have been a lot of people saying, tip the apple cart. Me personally, if ever anyone wants to ask me my personal decision on balance and not balance even, but on what stuff should be viable. I personally believe in throwing the apple cart right out with the house, the village, and then burning it all down, because I always think that's a really positive thing for the community, because the thing that you want is people having discussions. You want people having fun. You want people being like, oh my God. The last thing you want is the thing to just be the same all the time. I don't think that's the thing that we want in this game. I don't think that's what people want.
So awesome. So that means that we can talk about the core rules patch in the future. Great. It's wonderful.
No. Because I don't want to listen to this again. I'm going cross-eyed. Okay.
You're doing great. And I think there's other people out there who aren't cross-eyed. So let's go Ogre Kingdoms. This is actually very straightforward. Mostly it's just the Ogre Bulls removing their 1+, adding in the Bone Grinder. You can take that with the Ogres. That's basically it. Ogres actually did feel a little bit further along. Also reduce the restriction on scrap launchers, because I've never seen one on a table ever in any edition. There were some people that warned me that could be OP, so prove me right, or prove me wrong, sorry. Let's go down to the minor rules changes.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. Hey, if you're watching this, you're like, no, that's going to make that army too strong. Put it on the table, win a GT, email us, okay?
Win a game. Just win a game.
Yeah, play a game. Then I'll listen.
So ogres, I think in general suffer from points. So in the future, I think ogres would be a real highlight to either just get a blanket points upgrade, like they can run with 2100 or 2200, or actual points changes. So I think ogres will get the biggest lift later. However, the fact that you don't have to spend 100 something points on bulls is already a buff in general to points. So I think that's it. Lead Belchers were a standout unit to me of just like, why? Why did you do this to these guys? They used to be really cool. They no longer were. The only change is actually on the scatter shot profile, and that's basically to make it a shorter ranged repeater hand rifle, or handgun, sorry. So that gives it Armor Bane 1, Cumbersome, Multiple Shots 3, and it gets its old, Lead Belchers get their old rule back, which is that they ignore penalties for moving and shooting shooting, and multiple shots. So, they're hitting on 5s now instead of 7+. The next one, Iron Blaster, again, bringing it in line with the Steam Tank. And finally, Hunters.
Also, Lead Belchers were always bad. So, like, even that is...
Eighth Ed, I don't think they were bad.
I played them.
Shots
they
made.
Sucked.
They sucked? Okay. Well,
I think they sucked, but that's because people kept dropping Purple Sun on their heads. So,
yes. This did definitely, color your interpretation of things, was the relentless Purple Sunning that you suffered.
Unbelievable run of
Stay
Purple
tuned
Suns.
for my spell, my Colleges of Magic pack coming soon.
Rob. One is called Fuck Rob. That's what it's called. The spell.
The Purple Sun of Fuck Rob.
Yeah. That and Pit Shades all in one set.
The Hunter's rule is a lot similar to me as the Kadai Fireborn thing. It's a really minor thing. When a Hunter joins a unit of Saber Tusks, they can't skirmish anymore. Anytime you've seen them pictured, they're skirmishing. So just a rule to let them skirmish. Who cares? That's it for Ogres. Pretty light touch. Again, I think their biggest deal is points. But I'm really curious to see if this alone opens some stuff up.
Okay. All right, fun. Let us know in the chat below. Skaven!
Okay, so Skaven. Oh, Lord. All right, so Skaven, I just want to highlight here. So basically, most of their cool units are locked to 0 to 1, all of the hero options. So the Warlock, and the Plague Priest per 1,000 points. So you could bring one unit per like engineer, for example, but you were only allowed to bring 2 engineers.
Hate that.
So that sucks. That means that you have to essentially choose, like, do I want plague stuff or do I want engineer stuff? And then I have to bring a butt ton of engineers or plague priests to, like, at least 2 of each to get a lot of stuff. So it sucked and was dumb. Sorry if that's harsh, rules writers. I don't know why. I guess they were trying to force a theme here, right? And I think they just were way too heavy-handed with it.
But why are they trying to force a theme with an army that you can't play?
Because there was a time where this wasn't. So, like, I think with Skaven specifically, when I started looking at it in detail, I realized that it's very heavily influenced by its 6th ed roots rather than its 7th edition roots. I know the 7th edition Skaven book because it's what existed in 8th, and it's wild. Like, it's wild. It wasn't necessarily good, but it was bonkers. It had a lot of powerful things that might happen.
As was the 8-page FAQ.
Pardon me, to bring it up into 8th edition.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So anyway, we can just go down and I'll show you how we've unscrambled this egg a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So right off the hop, there's no restrictions on the sort of the hero choices. They are now just like normal heroes. Someone pointed out as well that the Warlord is not like your average Warlord. He's a pretty mid combat character. There's no real reason to lock him to the Grey Seer either. In core, I thought it would be good. That people will bemoan the fact that clan rats are no longer a mandatory choice. Usually clan rats were, or their cousins, the laborers / slaves. Yeah, maybe that doesn't matter. But I think I've given you reasons to want to bring clan rats, and we'll see that in a second. And then we also have, obviously, a core upgrade option. So now, rather than it being punitive, now if you bring a Warlord, you get to bring a unit of Storm Vermin in core. Or if you bring a Plague Monk, you get to bring a unit of Plague Monks in core. Sounds
That's awesome.
fun.
That's fun.
And fair.
And also thematic. Because, like, Skaven is like, yeah, you can play Skaven as like a variety of clans, but you almost should be I should be able to build only a Plague clan, only an Eshin clan, only a Scryer clan should be what I should be able to build, or an amalgamation.
And yes, and I think that was what the original list was trying to do. force you into building a specific style. The issue was that it wasn't finished, and it was too restrictive, and it was hard to hit your points. With the restrictions that were there. In special, I'm assuming that there were a bunch of 0 to 1 restrictions and stuff like that on these that I just deleted. Like, who cares about bringing more than 1 unit of rat ogres per 1,000 points? And then the Skyer things in this special section, it's just unlocked if you bring 1 engineer. You don't have to bring 1-to-1 like you did previously. So you can bring Warplock Jezzails or Poison Wing Globadiers. In rare, Hellpit kept it the same as far as restrictions go. Probably unnecessary, but it is. If your army includes a Clan Scar Warlock Engineer, you may 0 to 1 of the following may be taken of each per 1,000. So that means that you can have 2 Doom Wheels, 2 Warp Lightning Cannons if you so wish. And the same thing goes for the Plague Claw Catapult and the Plague Sensor Bearers. And that's basically it. Like, I have no idea what Skaven will be like now. You can also bring your Screaming Bell and Plague Furnaces and put them in units, give them a little extra protection. I honestly no idea if Skaven are competitively playable or even feel more like Skaven. I have no idea.
I think ultimately, if I could build a more thematic list, I'm more bothered about that than I am whether or not they're stronger. They definitely can't be weaker.
Correct. Yes. So they did get some rules changes as well to return some flavor. So why don't we have a look at those?
And also shout out to all the Skaven fans, because and also everyone else. Listen, if you're a guy running around with 3 dragons or whatever the fuck else you're doing, you're not mad. Like, at the last event we had, bottom table, round 5, 2 Skaven players battling it out for the wooden spoon. Will one of them win it? Right? That's important. But ultimately, but everyone was rooting for them. Everyone was like, yeah, your army sucks, let's go. And I think your army can not suck as much, and that's okay. I'm cool with that.
Absolutely. I would love them to get back to where they were, which is, I think, a spoiler type army, where if their random bullshit works, then it works. There's also, unfortunately, just because these guys feel like Lizardmen in the sense that it feels like their development was ended most the furthest back. So things like the Doom Wheel, which I had originally rewritten, the Warp Lightning Cannon, which I originally rewritten, they lost a lot of their flavor. Even things like the Screaming Bell and the Plague Furnace aren't as cool as they used to be. So Skaven certainly on deck for bringing back some of the cool shit that they had, just from a flavor perspective, not necessarily quality perspective, would be cool, but outside, I think, of the spirit of this document. So that's why, guys, I didn't do that. But I think there's some added stuff here that does give it some flavor. So let's have a look. One of these models. Okay. Oh, yes. There we go. Clan Rats. For whatever reason, zombies out of the gate weren't limited to 20 to 40. That was added later. But Clan Rats were. I don't know why. So they're back to 20 plus. So you can bring big fat units of Clan Rats if you so desire. Also added a special rule regiment. And I added that to Storm Vermin as well, because I've added detachment to the weapons teams. And I don't think that there's anything that has the regiment and detachment rule right now that actually uses it. It's actually a super cool rule. It allows you to do a supporting charge, a supporting stand and shoot if the regiment is charged. It is actually pretty neat, and I think really applicable to weapons teams. And I really want to see, does this actually make the weapons teams, because they're already one of the better options, does this maybe make the weapons teams even more interesting and attacking Skaven units a little more interesting? We'll see. But I thought this was suggested to me, I think by Ryan, and I loved it and I put it in, and let's see how it goes. As a result, though, weapon team special rules has things that are like the regiment and detachment rules. I deleted 2 of them. There's a third one that remains. But the rest of it is relying on the core rules about regiments and detachments. The next thing is the Hell Pit. Hell Pit was a monster of destruction. Nurgle Matt in the chat right now talking about how his Hell Pits are already good. Well, they're going up to toughness 6, because for whatever reason they're toughness 5. The reason for that is they traditionally were toughness 5, and this is a rare change to this rule for me. But they had so much more resiliency previously. And they also should have impact hits. They're a monster, and it's over 200 points. If you think this is rough, please cross-reference the giant chaos spawn and slide into my DMs. We can talk about it. On the Warp Lightning Cannon, simply adding multiple wounds D3+1 and magical attacks to its profile, and then adding the FAQ around. I think rules from Cannon Fire about not being able to target lone characters. Because essentially, this is the 6th edition Warp Lightning Cannon, which used to be D6 wounds. It's now a single wound in this version, and it's an 8d6 beam that goes out. Anything that's hit takes a strength shot equal to the artillery dice. Not nearly as cool, I think, personally, as the 7th edition version. But again, in the spirit of light touch, I think this makes it much better, at least usable. Gives Skaven a tool for shooting a dragon or something potentially at strength 10. And restores magical attacks because it is a warpstone weapon. And then finally down here, these are just rules to the Plague Furnace and Screaming Bell to account for the fact they can go into units now. Basically, that it can only join Plague Furnace can only join Plague Monks, Screaming Bell can only join Clan Rats, and Vermin. Storm Vermin, and that also Verminous Valor. I went back and forth on it, but because of combined profiles, I don't think it works. I think actually Verminous Valor doesn't work anymore. It used to be that they sort of hid on the Screaming Bell or the when they use Verminous Valor. Basically, it allows you to leave combat without refusing a challenge, that kind of a thing. It just doesn't work. So essentially, just say you can't use it. I think that's the cleanest way, and that's where we wound up with that. I think we're almost done, Rob. 2 to go.
2 to go, buddy. 2 to go.
Hang in there, babe.
How dare you? But also great.
Anything there jump out at you? Anything you thought that was cool?
No, I mean, literally no one plays that army. Like, same with Demons. No one plays them. Like, no one plays any of these armies. So
I think there's a very valid reason for that.
Yeah. There's a ton of reasons as for that. So if I none of this has remotely affected me in a way that I think matters. Like, hell pits at toughness 6. Boo hoo. There's loads of stuff that's also great. Yeah, and by no one plays them, I mean very few people play them. The people that play them are dedicated. And if this does end up making some super bonkers, amazing, great list, then cool. That's what defines the game. Warhammer is almost always mimetic. When you talk about 7th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, you say Demons and Dark Elves. Yeah. Like, immediately when you talk about 8th edition, you talk about Hordes and Unbreakable Bricks. But while those are sometimes frustrating at the time, they're mimetic, right? Like, they live in the framework of the game, and they add flavor and context, and I think that's fantastic. You want, not you specifically, Val, but us. We want things that the worst thing anything can ever do is be boring. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you want them to be evocative.
Like I said, 51% of the people playing Old World said they owned a legacy army, and we don't see them being played. So to me, that says that the way these rules are right now is achieving the objectives of the publisher, which is that they don't want them to be used. And I think that's bullshit. All right. Vampire counts. So you'll note there's no Renegade army list for vampire counts because their army list, I think, was supposed to be released as a core faction. That's my take. Mm-hmm. I think it was removed at the last second. So here's 2 of the few what some might call nerfs. I call them just come on, guys. Wailing Dirge is just as powerful as it was before. In 8th edition, where Wailing Dirge existed, it could do all the crazy bullshit that it can do now, except for when you were in combat, you had to scream the thing you were in combat with. For whatever reason, when they pasted the rule or like paraphrased the rules from previous editions, they left it ambiguous, and it seems like you can scream from being locked in combat to things outside of combat. Mm-hmm. So a feel bads rule with an extra stupid feel bads rule, all we're doing was we're taking away that. You can still scream into a combat from outside of it. You still do that. But if you yourself are in combat, you can't scream to something not in combat. That's it. Pretty simple. Mortis Engine brings it in line with the casket. Essentially, that was an errata or an FAQ for the casket, just making it so that it doesn't stack. So if you bring 3 Mortis Engines, you're not getting +3 to cast and +3 to your movement. I don't think this should not be controversial. I do not believe. Mm-hmm. Vampires themselves. So outside of that, that's kind of how I had it for a long time. But I think one big thing about vampire counts is the shocking lack of vampires in vampire counts, specifically their Lord level character. Mm-hmm. And so I think these are changes that are aimed at bringing them some degree of relevancy or at least usefulness. Some may say this is a nerf. So vampire count leadership goes to 9. Right now they're at 8. That was one of the that's dumb moments when I first read this list. Reason being, vampire counts. So the vampire lord character was always leadership 10, going back forever.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I don't know why it's not 10.
So because most things that were 10 got knocked down. So like there's not a lot of leadership 10, so that's fair. Going all the way down to leadership 8, what? So back to 9. So that does mean that if you bring a vampire count, he's your general. So now we have to make a choice, right? So that also means that the vampire count needs to be better. And so giving him the option to have full plate armor, and also the option to wear armor and cast magic, which he always has had the ability to do in previous editions. Very, very important for his resiliency.
It was almost like the USP in many ways. Like unique selling point is like he could be fully plated and cast spells. Like it was like that's the point, right? Like a vampire lord should solo an army.
Yeah, he's friggin' Rambo. Like if there ever was a Chaos Lord on Dragon, it should have been the friggin' Chaos the Vampire Lord, and he was equivalent. So he should be up there with your Dukes and your Chaos Lords, and perhaps now he will be. Probably not though. Dark Acolyte is a vampire ability. And essentially, it gives them the ability to cast Invocation of Nehek, but it limits vampires to only ever doing that at casting level 1. Vampire counts, vampire lords are still limited in total to getting to level 3 in their ability, but now they can cast Invocation of Nehek at least at a level 3. So it means that they're not as good as a necromancer at resing, but they can do the other stuff that a vampire should be able to do. The Black Coach thing is just a base size request because I think they were trying to make it longer, but no. It's just a bit wider to account for the fact that it should be 60 millimeters wide because of the change in cavalry size basis. But that's optional. It's a minimum max. That's it for vampire counts. So essentially just literally the vampire lord character really getting some love, which I think maybe unlocks a different way of building your vampire counts, and maybe it's something that becomes effective, or maybe it isn't, but I think it restores a bit of former glory. Finally, rounding it all out, we got the Dark Elves. No change to their army list, as mentioned previously. One of the biggest general buffs to the army is to Murderous, so now it's all non-magical weapons get Murderous. However, it's limited to the first round of combat, and it results in a reroll of all reroll any rolls to wound of a natural 1. This puts them in a rare, so like there's a lot of armies that have a rule like this, and in general they apply only to hand weapons with one exception, and that's the choppas of orcs and goblins. I just felt like it was flavorful for Dark Elves to have an ability that they could use, and also it's weird that Murderous is used by a lot of units but unable to be used because they have either, like, witches have 2 hand weapons usually, executioners have their giant sword, so they get no benefit from it. It really only worked with like not even spearmen. I have no idea who was supposed to use Murderous. So this, I think, at least gives it some use. It's not overwhelming because it's only the first round of combat. I think it's fair. I had made a change to Hectari's Blessing as well as Corsairs. I removed those changes because I don't think they were necessary. I think they were a little beyond what needed to be done. And we can maybe look at things in the future for those things. Adding back character mount options for the Dreadlord or Master, which existed previously and did not in this edition. People asked for the Beastmaster as well, but in 8th edition, he had the same mount options, so I kept that consistent. The Manticore, this might be controversial. The Manticore in, for example, Chaos, Warriors of Chaos, does not give a toughness buff, but that's because they're base toughness 4, and the Chaos Lord himself is a base toughness of 5. And so I think the ridden monstrous creature that's a non-behemoth, so not a dragon, I think their toughness band is in general supposed to be about 5. So you'll see things like Griffins getting you to about toughness 5. And for whatever reason, the Manticore here only got you to toughness 4. So I think it's completely reasonable that they would get a toughness bonus to get you to 5. Cauldron of Blood. It can go in a unit now, and it's also a large target, going to attract some attention to the very squishy elves around it. It has things that used to be passive buffs in previous editions are now basically a bound spell. And it's power level 2. So I thought giving it a bounce spell more in line with something like the Anvil of Doom, which is power level 3, might give it a chance to actually get some of those buffs, and so buffs off for the Witch Elves, which might see it used. War Hydra, this is just a that's dumb situation. There's no other reason for this. It had one of the things it has is the serrated maw. Serrated maw is the name of the weapon, and it had no AP. And I thought that's stupid. Why would a serrated maw, a sharp that sounds sharp, why wouldn't it have AP? So I gave it AP 1. That's literally, no one asked for that. That was all me.
That's just me offended by words.
That's me. That's it, Rob. You did it. You did it. Oh, hold on.
I did it.
You did it. Oh God, look at that. I'm glad I started with Chaos Dwarfs. I'm really glad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, light touches, excellent. I was sold at the start.
Meaningful though.
Yeah, that's the thing about Old World is like really small micro changes can have a pretty large impact, but also just failing the leadership check and running off the board can also be pretty devastating. So yeah, I think I applaud you for the work and effort you put into it as a review.
Took over my life.
I also applaud and everyone who has made it here with me. We've been on a journey together, which many of us didn't make. Many, and shout out to all my fallen soldiers halfway through. But yeah, cool. And I will adopt this at my events. This doesn't bother me. What? You've sold me. Yeah, this is fine. It doesn't mean anything. It's just some stuff. Like there'll be like one Skaven guy who's like, there'll just be Kev. He's like, it's toughness 2 now. And I'm like, whatever, Kev. It doesn't matter. Like
that's the other thing. Is these Rob, that means so much to me. This is the other thing is that like so many of these armies are so rare that like you could probably just go to a normal tournament not using these rules and just say that they're in play. Not saying do that, but like nobody knows what the fuck these things do. Like
no one knows what their own army does. I regularly run events and 80 to 90% of the people are like, I'm not really fucking sure actually. Like, so.
So there you go. So this is the informed, I would say, a pretty informed set of opinions about what would at least make these more fun. Hit me in the comments if you disagree, if you think this is an overreach or stupid. I am, of course, running these in my events. As mentioned before, lots of TOs are interested in immediately adopting them, even in this form. I would call this a beta form. So obviously there's going to be feedback, obvious things wrong with this, despite how much work has already gone into it. Rules writing's hard. But unlike the publisher, we have the ability to take feedback from everyone using these things. And I really, really encourage you in the comments. I'll provide a mechanism for providing feedback and messaging directly, so that way you can share thoughts. I really encourage it because I think if the ownership has been like abandoned, if it's basically this is vaporware at this point, then I think therefore like the development of these rules to keep in pace with the core armies belongs to the community, and I would love to continue taking, like obviously I can't speak for the community. I'm not the community, but I can do my best to account for the way people feel and what they think. And so many good ideas are out there. So that's what I'll try to do.
That's fun. And there is loads of really fun stuff. I think the biggest pushback, well, the biggest info that me and Val have been given is that people want different formats as well. And obviously, I feel like I've spearheaded that movement a lot around the world, and even more to come from what we're doing in the future, which is exciting. There'll be a link in this video. There'll be a link to currently the Honest Wargaming website where there'll be this will be permanently stored, but then eventually the Squarebase website will also be stored. So like there'll be a bunch of stuff available. So we would like to set up a bunch of tournament organizer resources as well. But with Val away next week at Adepticon, me away at Adepticon, it's still going to take a couple of months to get all that stuff squared away. And nailed in. So we will get that all available for people in the future, which is cool. So if you are super keen and want to use it, then do. And if you do use the stuff, and let us know, like especially not just if you're a TO or even playing at events, but if you're just playing at your local club, it's like, yeah, cool, this is cool. I'm going to use this. Is that okay? And if your club mates are cool with it, that's a fun, cute thing. So that's nice, like improving people's lives. Well done. Loads of love in the comments for Val for doing it.
One thing I want to add is that working on right now getting these added to the list builders. So right now it's a little bit awkward actually building a list, designing it, using this stuff. But both New Recruit and the Army Builder, oldworldbuilder.com, working on getting them added as an option. So hopefully we see that in the coming weeks.
Fantastic. Listen, It's great. Well done to you. Well done to you. And we'll see you all soon. There's so much exciting stuff coming up. We've got Cathay units, Cathay reveals. There's loads of stuff, event format stuff. Let's go back and look at some of the older stuff as well. So that's super fun. Loads of love to everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon. Bye.